Her Majesty's Secret Service. Whether you're a book, or the movie, you have a very good story. But old and good time, that is what the review is here to tell you about. This was actually the very first Bond book that I ever read. As you can tell, I picked it up from a thrift store. In fact, there is the price tag. As you can see, I got it in pretty rough shape, which is probably the reason why it was donated in the first place. But I feel like the more rougher nature of the cover kind of tells to the idea of how much happens in this book. And I get the feeling I probably mentioned this griffin on the bottom. It was supposed to be an illustration that unfortunately got cut off. Well, the illustration was thankfully recreated on the inside. Anyway, enough of the window dressing stuff. It's rather fascinating. After the events of Casino Royale, that casino had become a very popular spot for Bond to visit. Especially when you got to the end of the season, when the pockets were deeper and the gamblers were a lot more risky. He had his fill of the casino and took a seat at a nearby cafe. However, over his shoulder, he did not notice that there were two very tough-looking Corsicans watching his every move. As Bond sees the last golden days of summer melt away before him in that cafe, he reflects on everything that has led up to that point so far. After the Thunderball case, its leader, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, as well as his organization Spectre, have gone underground. At this point, Bond had been pursuing every single lead he could find for the latter part of a year, and, well, he's just sick of it. As he's driving to the casino, he's figuring out how to make out his resignation letter. He is interrupted in thought when a girl in a really fast car zooms right by him. This is something that has always excited Bond, so he decides to chase after her. Unfortunately, he loses her within a nearby village. However, he does manage to catch up with her back at the casino. He talks to the maitre d' of the hotel and realizes that her name is Tracy. Well, Bond finishes his last little cup of espresso when he notices that the beach is completely closed. However, there is one person walking in an almost hypnotic state out into the water. It is the mysterious Tracy again, and Bond can tell that she has no plans of coming back to the beach whatsoever. She leaves behind her shoes and slowly walks her way to the water. Immediately, Bond jumps right into action with his two pursuers just right behind him. As he's trying to figure out how to have the situation make sense for Tracy, he is pinned down by the two Corsicans. While out in the water, it looks like Coast Guard comes to collect Tracy. Or, at least that's how it appears. All of them are put on that small, inflatable boat. As Bond is sitting there, he's thinking about all the potential ways he could take care of these thugs. None of them really seem to have a really definitive way out. So, he goes back in the thought again as to how in the world did he ever get involved with this girl? Well, he is at the casino, playing his usual game of Baccarat again, when the bet placed is at a really high amount. Just then, the mysterious Tracy comes over to the table and says, "I want in on this game." She loses the hand, and she has to explain to the hotel that she doesn't have any money. Now, in the gambling circle, this is one of the most unforgivable sins possible. Not only do all the casinos chat with each other so they know that she would be a fraud, and they wouldn't even let her anywhere near a gambling floor for the rest of her life. However, Bond comes up with a pretty quick excuse saying,
"Forgive me. My mind was elsewhere. Madame has forgotten we agreed to be partners this evening."
The game carries on. Everybody knows that this was just a show of kindness, but The hotel staff, as well as the gambling floor, are happy that they didn't have to figure out how to fix that amount of debt. Up until Tracy showed up, Bond was having quite the marvelous time at the table, winning a ton of money. But afterwards, the cards went cold, and he had to leave the table with very meager winnings. He meets back up with Tracy, where he finds out that she is burning herself out, much like a comet, going as fast as possible through space, just waiting for the inevitable day that everything would burn to the ground. Tracy doesn't really seem so concerned by this, and simply says that she intends to pay her debt. And how she does this is she sells her body. James Bond, being James Bond, takes full advantage of this. However, there is an air of gentleness about him, as he knows that this girl is broken. He doesn't want to break her anymore. So, as a way to try to patch things over after the lovemaking, he invites her to breakfast. However, she is not having it and kicks him right out of the room. That is where we go back to Bond on that little boat, trying to figure out where they're going to next. They pull up to what looks like a really big truck with a trailer in the back. Each are put inside, Bond with a small group of guards, and Tracy in another room with another group of guards. They make it to what appears to be the head's main office. Bond believes that this is the best time to jump into action, so, with a knife that is concealed in his shoe, he's able to take it out, able to subdue the guards, not kill, just knock them out. He locks the door behind him, gets his knife ready, to see on the desk a very pleasant man saying,
"Do not kill me, Mr. Bond. At least not until we've had a drink."
However, Bond, with just all that built-up adrenaline, the idea that he was just about ready to kill anybody, he has to let it out somehow. So he takes his knife and he throws it at a nearby calendar that's right behind the man. He looks at it for a second and then puts on his glasses to closely inspect it, and he's like, well, that's not bad aim. I got it on the 14th, but it's really the 15th. From there, this guy just has a charm that is impossible to describe. Bond just immediately feels like he's known this guy throughout the rest of his life. And so, he takes him up on his offer to have that little chat he's talking about. They each enjoy their conversation over a nice glass of whiskey. When this mysterious man trusts Bond with probably the biggest piece of information he can give him, he is the head of the Union course. I can definitely say, after reading The Godfather, I feel like I have a much different perspective whenever there is some sort of mob boss that is brought up in media. And that is exactly what the Union course is. It is a Corsica gang that has been behind some very atrocious things. You got like your typical stuff like drugs, money laundering, stolen goods. Bond listens very intently to this, but he wants to know, what does all this have to do with him? It is then that Mark Ange, or Draco if you prefer, comes to the point saying that Tracy is his daughter. At first, Bond is a little embarrassed by this. It's like, did she tell you about that lovemaking we had? That was kind of a private deal. To which Draco's just like, no, you're a man. You have instincts. That's perfectly fine. But outside of that, what you did for her was a fantastic thing. As you can see, she has been slowly trying to burn herself to death. But meeting you has helped out substantially. He then goes to a nearby filing cabinet to pull out a little note. It's Tracy's suicide letter, and in it, she says that she at least has a little bit of a regret for leaving this world because Bond made it worthwhile. Obviously, when Draco figured this out, he sent all his resources down to try to save Tracy from killing herself. It is there that Draco tries to go into a bit of negotiations.
On the day you marry her, I'll give you a personal dowry of £1 million in gold.
To which Bond is like, I'm a bachelor. I enjoy my freedom. I don't want to be bogged down with this woman. There's just a lot of back and forth of negotiations where Bond says that he will go on a few more dates with her, but he wants some information. Where is Ernst Stavro Blofeld? Yeah, I'm very familiar with this man. Several of my henchmen defected to him a few years ago. He goes to the desk and he makes a few phone calls to try to figure out the exact location of this man, to which the details are very vague, but he's able to tell Bond that Blofeld is in Switzerland. Bond is just all of a sudden amazed. After a year of just finding absolutely nothing on this man, just a simple run-in with a girl he was chasing was enough to finally ascertain the location of this criminal mastermind. Bond feels pretty good about himself until he remembers that he has to keep up his end of the bargain. We skip ahead a little bit, where Bond says that he had a most delightful dinner with Tracy, and just this one more meeting was enough for Tracy to take the initiative to try to straighten her life back out. She is admitted into a rehab, psych ward, take your pick, some sort of hospital to try to get her better again in Switzerland. Before she is admitted, Bond makes the promise that he will see her once she is fully rehabilitated again. Bond kind of thinks back to this and says, I probably shouldn't have said that. It's hard to say if I'll ever be able to see her again. There's a bit of a shake-up at the office. Bond's old secretary, Viola Penzabody from Moonraker, has retired. Married a nice agent and just wanted to settle down. His new secretary is Mary Goodnight, which, given her measurements, is the apple of everybody's eye. Everybody is trying to hit on her, with 006 being in the lead. However, she is yet to take anybody's advances as of yet. As Bond is driving to the office, beeper goes off. It is a new invention that has started to become standard within the service, and as for the protocol, he has to go to the nearest phone and call in. So he goes to a payphone, makes his usual report. There he is given some rather odd instructions to report to the College of Arms. Bond is like, what does this have to do with the Spectre case that I'm on? All he is given is the name Griffin Orr. Or what? Just Orr, that's his name. That was a direct quote from the book. I just love that little play on words. So, Bond goes to the College of Arms and is able to find this Griffin, to which he is very excited. He's got paperwork all over the place, and it's like, Mr. Bond, you're probably related to Timothy Bond of Bond Street. Look, I even found your coat of arms. It says, the world is not enough. It's got 3 bezants on it. It's fantastic, isn't it? And look, his title is even defunct, so you can actually... Wait, you're not interested in your heraldry? Why did you want me to research into your heraldry? This is very confusing. I don't know what to do. Let me call up my supervisor. So he goes over to the phone to talk to Sable Basilisk. At first Bond is like, oh gosh, not another stuffed shirt to have to deal with. But as Sable comes in, he is able to explain to Bond the whole situation. He's just like, pay no attention to Griffin. He can get very much lost in his work. So, the main reason that I brought you here is that I received a letter a few months ago from an Ernst Stavro Blofeld, trying to get the title of Count Bluvel. They have yet to ever meet in person. Instead, he has been receiving a lot of correspondence from his lawyer, Gumboldt. They have been hard at work for this task for several months, when Sable believes that this can be an in. He used to work intelligence during the wartime, so he kind of has some basic protocol. However, he does have to be cleared by intelligence once again, just to be absolutely sure. He is cleared, and after a lot of back and forth in letters, the perfect cover is brought into place. Another member of the College of Arms is a Sir Hilary Bray. While he is technically an associate, he rarely ever shows up for work. He has decided to retire to the Scottish Highlands, where he is just obsessed with mountain climbing. As such, very few people even know what he looks like. So, they're going to beef up the description to match what Bond looks like. Bond is given quite a rundown in heraldry, as well as an interesting thing to note. It appears that when it comes to the art of heraldry, people will just lay bare everything in their lives. The idea that they could become a lady, a sir, a dame, a count, a duke. They just spill everything out on the table. And so, Sable says that he can use this to his advantage. Finally, the day comes, and Bond is given an audience, the soon-to-be Count de Bluevel, in Switzerland. Bond thinks this is really just a wild goose chase, as well as even the Chief of Staff. But if there's any chance whatsoever of apprehending such a dangerous and brilliant criminal, they would be out of their minds not to take it. Bond decides to travel very lightly, not even taking any weapons with him, just in case he were to be searched. He dons what any sir would look like he was wearing and goes to the airport, carrying a copy of The Guardian with him. As Bond is sitting there, he is not accustomed to given special treatment because now he's a sir. It's there that he's just like, you know what? I'm not a stuffed shirt. I'll never will be. I'm just going to be my own count. So he immediately throws away his copy of The Guardian and picks up the Times. I get the feeling if I was in the UK, maybe this would be a little more symbolic. Like maybe The Guardian is more like the snooty paper, while the Times is more the paper of the common man. But either way, the flight to Switzerland goes all right when he is picked up by a very mysterious, almost toad-like woman named Irma Bunt. Bunt leads Bond to a helicopter, which is to take him up into the research facility that de Bluevel is funding out of his own pocket. Inside, he finds that the clinic has some very strict rules, is that there are no door handles leading into the outside hallway. If he wants to leave, he has to ring for a porter to be able to escort him anywhere he needs to go. And on top of that, bedtime is to be strictly adhered at 10 o'clock. No exceptions. Bond looks it over and says, you know what? This will do nicely, but can I get another table? I've got a lot of paperwork to go through. Oh yes, sure thing, Sir Hilary. Bring a table. I would attempt to say that in German, but I don't know that much German. Bond is invited to dinner at 7 o'clock. Bond gets the uneasy feeling that the whole place is either recorded or wired for sound, so he goes right to work on some heraldry until 7 o'clock rolls around. When it does, he is greeted to the most beautiful of sights. The clinic only treats female patients, and very lovely ones at that. During the cocktail hour, he is able to make quick friends with them, with a bit of a game that he played in probably the seediest and filthiest bar in Singapore. The idea is that you would take a cup, you would put a napkin on top of it, wet around the rim so that way it's stuck, and then you put a coin right in the middle. Anybody that smokes would then take their cigarettes and burn little holes wherever they wanted to. The person that would burn the hole that dropped the coin in would be the one that would have to pay for the drinks. The game is quite a smash hit, and he's immediately the fascination of all the girls of the clinic. Not only being the only man there besides the Count and the guards, but also the idea that he seems a lot less of a stuffed shirt than most people would think a person from the College of Arms would be. At dinner, he notices that all the girls have a very particular quirk. All of them only eat one dish. There is one that only eats potatoes. There's one that only eats chicken, and so on. Bond asks for this, to which one of them, Ruby, lets out that this is part of the allergy treatment. The idea that they used to be allergic to such things, and now, not only have they been cured, but they just absolutely love the very thing that they have been allergic to. Bond finds it a bit odd, but just decides to stow it away. Well, the meal is over, and Bond decides to go back into his heraldry once again. Before he drifts off to sleep, he hears a very bizarre murmuring coming from underneath his feet. He thinks about what it could be, as there is a kind of rhythm to it. But after a while, he just decides it must be the heating pipes, and then drifts off to sleep. The next day, he is awoken in probably one of the worst ways possible. He hears a blood-curdling scream. Bond immediately rings for the porter and wants to know what in the world just happened. However, the porter is very dismissive, basically saying, "Duh, do you want breakfast?" So what happened to the poor guy? "I don't know, must have tripped. Do you want breakfast?" So, I mean, was it an accident? "You'll be fine in hospital. Do you want breakfast?" To which Bond is like, "Okay, I guess I'll have to get my information elsewhere." So, he has his breakfast in his room, when outside he hears that the girls are doing some winter activities. He's able to crack the window just a little bit in order to hear what is going on. In the night, one of the guards got really frisky with one of the patients, and as such, he was thrown down the bobsled run, head first. There was very little left of him afterwards. But this, in Bond's mind, proves that this must be Spectre's headquarters. Who else would devise such a horrible way to die? So, that day, Bond is granted an audience with the Count. What he sees before him is a man that has undergone substantial reconstructive surgery. About the only thing left of the old Blofeld is the eyes, which even then are obscured by green contact lenses. This Blofeld is a sun worshipper and wants to try to get a tan whenever and wherever possible. And those contact lenses are to make it so he doesn't burn out his eyes. At first, Blofeld is like, why in the world did the College of Arms need to fly somebody out here? I mean, couldn't you have just taken a photo of me or something? However, Bond is able to come up with a learned excuse from Sable himself. The first thing is that the de Bluevels were born without earlobes, which of course this Blofeld doesn't have. And on top of that, he needed him to confirm some first-hand documents, with the last de Bluevels coming from Augsburg. Count Bluevel starts to warm up to this, and even invites Sir Hilary into his little chamber so that they can both get a tan. And there, they discuss matters of the heraldry, to which Bond is saying that the research is very promising. More paperwork on the heraldry, when Bond decides that he wants a break. After all, the Research Institute may be on top of the mountain, but just below him is a cavalcade of a whole bunch of winter sports activities. And he wants to go down there under the guise of trying to see what all these sports are about. First, he decides to go to the ski workshop. There, an array is a whole bunch of plastic wedges, all about the size and length of a ruler. Bond realizes that this could be a very useful tool for being able to get out of the door if need be. So, he swipes it away under the guise of a good conversation. He takes a look at all the maps. He wants to see how the bob run is, as well as the ski runs. That way, if he had to get out of there in a hurry, he would have some sort of backup plan. Irma Bunt finds Sir Hilary and says that it is lunchtime. He can tell that she is a little on the annoyed side and decides to come clean about taking the plastic wedge. To which Bunt is like, "You want a ruler? We could have given you a ruler. Why did you have to just keep it. We'll send you a ruler later, okay? Does that sound good?" And so, he is at lunch when he has another close call. an old army buddy of the real Sir Hilary Bray wants to talk with him. Bond kind of anticipated this might happen, so he came up with a story that he is actually that Sir Hilary Bray's cousin. And unfortunately, that Sir Hilary Bray died in a mountain climbing accident. And so, he inherited the title. This is satisfactory, but Bond feels like he is skating on a razor's edge. Bond is just working like crazy when all of a sudden the door opens to reveal Ruby. She motions him to come into the bathroom, to which Sir Hilary's just like, okay, why do we have to go to the bathroom? To which she says that this whole place is bugged. This is the only place they don't have anything. So that confirmed Bond's suspicion after all. Ruby decides to give her last name, which is Windsor. This is a very big name in London, and he promises that he is going to look into this. However, he does note that the Count does come first. From there, Bond is able to kind of steer the conversation into how in the world she ended up in this clinic. It turned out that her family owned a very prominent chicken farm. And
Make me break up. It was all over. You'd be surprised where.
so there was a newspaper clipping talking about the clinic as well as curing some very different allergies. And so the family, having the money, decided to send her up to be taken care of. And so far, the treatment has been working. And then Bond decides to steer the conversation again so that he is able to sleep with her, to which Ruby is just kind of like, ooh, okay. Several hours later, and Bond needs a drink. So he goes up to enjoy the cocktail hour to run into one of the other girls with the last name O'Neill. Once again, very similar story to Ruby, except she came from a prevalent potato farmer. So after dinner, they decide to play that little messed up game from Singapore, and then Bond decides to go back to his work again. After a late enough hour, he sneaks out with his newly acquired tool right into Ruby's bedroom. So, Bond is in Ruby's room, where they enjoy another session of lovemaking. He really gets around in this story, doesn't he? They are having their customary pillow talk. Sir Hilary says that there is unfortunately very little to go on for the Windsor name, but promises her that he will look into it as soon as he gets back to the college. To which Ruby's like, figured it was a shot in the dark anyway. As they both drift off to sleep, there is all of a sudden a weird array of noises coming through. Ruby explains that this is part of the treatment, hypnosis. Bond listens to it for a little bit, but then after a while is like, this isn't really striking me, I'm just going to go to bed. Next day, Bond goes over his finding with de Bluevel, to which they go over the immediate family. He can only recall back to his great-grandfather, which is rather fascinating that all of them have been named Ernst. Unfortunately, Bond sees this as a bit of a roadblock, to which Blofeld is like, oh, come on, how much can I pay you? You know, I mean, you don't make much of a penance, do you? I mean, I will give you anything you want, just give me the dang title already. As Bond is thinking about the offer, the front door bursts open, and a guy with a trail of blood behind him smashes to the floor. He is still conscious, however, in the haze, he's just like, Bond? James Bond? Oh, thank goodness. Can you explain to them that I'm with you, you know, but I'm perfectly fine. They don't have to kill me. To which Bond is given quite a dilemma here. Does he blow his cover to save this man? Or does he keep the cover to kill this man, basically? He decides to keep the cover, to which this agent of Switzerland is just kind of like, but no, help me, get back. Takes a look at it and is just like, why did he think that you work for Universal Exports? I don't know. Poor guy looks like he had quite a head injury, if you ask me. Universal Exports. That's been kind of a synonym for the Secret Service. Well, I never heard of it. Well, anyway, to get back to your offer, let's just say I'll sleep on it for a bit. He walks away, to which Blofeld's like, I'm not sure if this man can be trusted. There is a memo that goes out throughout the entire clinic, to which Ruby comes into Bond's room to tell him what the memo is. She says that nobody is allowed to talk to Sir Hilary unless they're with Irma Bunt or one of the various guards throughout the entire, shall we say, campus. Bond smooths this over, basically saying he thinks that he is being distracting for the cure of all these allergies. This is sufficient enough for Ruby, and so Bond goes to lunch to just be completely given the cold shoulder. He attempts to try to make some conversation, but all of it is quickly shot down by the toad of Irma Bunt. As Bond is having lunch, he wonders how much time he really has. What kind of torture methods are they going to use on this Swiss agent, and how long is he going to hold out before giving away his identity? Well, Bond decides to keep his cover anyway. After lunch, starts working like crazy on what he can, but also trying to figure out a means of escape. Dinner rolls around. Bond is able to get a few pieces from Irma. Bond says that he needs some snow goggles because the sun is too bright up there in the mountains and it is starting to give him a headache, to which she's just like, okay, here you go. And then Bond also requests a little bit of schnapps, something to give him a bit of a nightcap. This is granted as well. And from there, Bond decides to have a very big dinner. He gets the feeling that he has to run tonight, so he wants to get as much alcohol and as much food in him before he has to make that deadly trek down the mountain. He is the last one to leave the dinner table, which is just alright for him. He peruses around to try to find a pair of gloves, which he lifts off of one of the girls' piles of winter clothing. He then decides to make his way to the ski workshop, to which the guy is still working there trying to make all these little wedges of plastic. However, he does keep up a bit of a conversation to look over which pair of skis might be big enough for him to be able to escape on. Bond goes back to his paperwork and waits until it's about lights out, the mysterious 10 o'clock. Now, when Bond was with Ruby before, he asked her about all the names of all these people, realizing that there's got to be something nefarious about this. This Blofeld would not do all this for the betterment of humanity. He's able to write down all these names on some toilet paper, because they're in the bathroom, that was the best way to do it. And as Bond is preparing to go, he writes a message in invisible ink. The ink in question is his urine. I guess it's one of the oldest ways of making invisible ink, just apply a little heat to it and then you can see it. Along the way, he's trying to take inventory as to what he'll need. He realizes that since he doesn't have any weapons, he has to improvise. So he has blades from his razor, as well as his watch. His main idea is that he is going to take it off and wear it around as a knuckle duster. And then as he's able to punch the lights out, he'll add a little more oomph because of the glass on the surface. Bond makes his way to what appears to be the front door, and he is able to knock out the guard in such a fashion with his watch. After he does so, he decides to move the body away when the phone rings. It's a good thing he picked it up, because in it is a whole bunch of the guards speaking German saying, hey, we're going to take care of that Sir Hilary in 10 minutes. Are you up for it? Yeah, I'll beat you there. He hangs up the phone, and he realizes how much time he has left. From there, he goes back to the ski workshop, thankfully empty, and he tries to get his skis on securely. Now, this is at a time where you didn't have special shoes where you just kind of slide in there and then it locked you into place. It is more a whole bunch of bindings that you have to tie to your feet. And that is how you're able to make your way down the mountain. Bond does so, and he gets about maybe 20 minutes out when all of a sudden there is gunfire. There is the cable car that is leading up to the mountain that they are firing from, and there are also a few skiers behind him. He is able to memorize the path good enough to be able to make his way down the mountain. However, he accidentally gets on one of the wrong trails. One that is closed for a risk of avalanche. The guards use this to their advantage, and they set off a loud bang, which causes an avalanche to chase right after Bond. He doesn't know how, as it did catch up to him, but he does manage to escape it. And thankfully he was even able to take some of the guards with him. So, he's able to unbury himself and pursue the nearby village. It is Christmas Eve, and as such, he's hoping to lose himself in the crowd. He makes it to the village when a nearby passenger train goes by. Bond is just barely able to clear it. However, one of his pursuers attempted to do the same, and let's just say there's just chunks of him everywhere. So, not only does Bond have Blofeld after him, but now the Swiss police are after him. Thankfully, he is able to blend in with the crowd. He goes into what looks like an ice rink area, where the attendant has clearly had a lot to drink, but he is able to explain. It's just like, hey, you want to get in there? You need 3 shillings. You need 2 shillings. You need a shilling, okay? Is that good? Bond pays it, and it's just like, it's a masquerade. You have to wear one of these masks. So, he puts on one of the masks, and this is able to kind of hide his identity a little bit. There, Bond is just simply exhausted and just wants to sit there and slowly feel himself come to life. However, a voice on the loudspeaker comes up saying, "This is the last time for the rink. Everybody needs to get on." To which Bond is just like, "No, leave me alone." Probably shouldn't make a scene. Okay, let's try it. He's able to keep up on his feet and able to join in the last ice skating rink. And just at the moment he is about to pass out, he sees Tracy. They don't really have a whole lot of time to talk. However, he does mention that he is in danger and he has to get out of there right away. Tracy is able to put her coat on him. She's wearing several layers, so she's perfectly fine. And they try to make their way out to her car. Bond has the idea of, hey, let's just kiss. Maybe we'll be harder to find that way. However, Tracy is a little lost in the moment. It's just like, oh, you taste delicious. It's been so long since I last kissed you. Bond's just like, yeah, let's start the car. As they were kissing, they were followed by one of the Count's men. So, Tracy is driving, to which Bond realizes that immediately this clinic has done wonders for her. Even though she is driving like a mad woman, he can tell that now there is a purpose for her life. Instead of her burning out, it's more about trying to save Bond. And there, Bond is able to give his end of the story. Tracy is a bit more of a matter-of-fact woman and says, "So, how many of them did you kill?" What? Don't be shy about that. I know you're part of the Secret Service. You said there was 13 of them. How many did you take care of already? To which Bond says, probably about 3, maybe 4. Well, it looks like we're being pursued by another group of them. I'm going to try to lose them as well as I can. And so, Tracy tries to go as fast as possible. Thankfully, she came well equipped, as her car is equipped with rally tires, something that isn't easily given to the public, but she was able to find a source for them. And just up ahead, there was a bridge out. Bond comes up with a brilliant idea. Drive to the end of the actual bridge and drop me off here. I'm going to see if I can lose them. So what Bond is able to do is, as quickly as possible, pick up the sign and convince the group of people to drive over the cliff thinking that it is actually the bridge that they need to go over. However, when the car goes there, it's not exactly straightforward, as the car managed to stop at about here. However, it is teetering and then it slowly falls over the edge, sending everybody to the careening river down below. Once again, Tracy doesn't question this and just drives on. Bond is basically exhausted, to which Tracy is saying, you know what, just go to sleep. I'll wake you up when you get to the Zurich International Airport. Now, in case you are wondering how Tracy was able to get there, well, not only was the mental hospital in Switzerland, but she checked out of that a few months ago. It was actually Draco that was able to give Bond's location, and Tracy had been trying everywhere to figure out where he went. Next day, Bond decides to call up the local intelligence agency, to which he explains everything that happened, even saying, I'm afraid one of your agents has been killed because of this. Well, the guy on the other end, even though he was awakened pretty early in the morning, is pretty fine with all this, and even offers to send Bond some support. But Bond is like, I've got enough people after me already. Don't put a bullseye on me. I'm sorry about ruining your Christmas. Hangs it up and returns to Tracy, which is in a restaurant which is attached to the airport. They chat for a little bit when Bond is like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to find another girl like this. Not only is she okay with my line of work, but, well, she's seen the more unpleasant side of humanity like I have, and I feel like we complement each other. So, he proposes marriage to her. Tracy is very excited by this, but trying to figure out the details of the wedding while in the midst of such an intense case as this is no easy feat. However, they make plans with Tracy escaping to a nearby hotel that she goes to all the time in Germany, while Bond wants to finish the mission. Bond flies back to England and is surprised to see that in the back of the car that was sent for him is Mary Goodnight. Bond once again apologizes for ruining her Christmas. However, Goodnight is perfectly alright with this, saying it was just going to be plum pudding at my aunt's place, and she's a very boring conversationalist. And besides, it's not very often I get action like this, so I wanted to be a part of it. Bond goes back to the office to make a temporary report, and then he is to report to M's house. Now, M is an old naval man, and if he had his way, he would have loved to have his house on the coast where he can look out into the vast ocean. However, because of his obligation, he has to be close to Buckingham Palace, so he settled for the second best thing, a sea of trees. Inside, we see that keeps his house shipshape. He even has a butler, which, instead of being considered a butler, is more like a first mate on a ship. In fact, even the doorbell is more of a traditional bell pull rather than something you press. Once again, really calling to mind that M is a naval man, and he's proud of it. As Bond goes down through the hallway, he sees various paintings of great warships, of swords, and other great antiques of when the sun never set in the British Empire. Bond is able to catch up with them to find that one of his hobbies is painting orchids. He's doing so, he's just like, I remember there was a good mystery novel where there was this one guy obsessed with orchids. I don't understand why, it's a pretty hideous flower. Except for this particular species right here. But I bore you. Now, it seems you got some important information on this Ernst Devereux Blofeld, don't you? To which Bond is able to make out his report. Both of them go into what looks like M's drawing room, which is almost a replica of what M has back at the office. He goes over the report, to which he congratulates Bond on making it there in one piece. However, both of them are stumped as to what exactly Blofeld is up to. they can't really think too much on this, as M has promised the family that helps run the estate to go along with the traditional Christmas feast. We obviously see that M is not really into this, and he immediately looks at the table and is just like, "What is that?" "Crackers, sir, it's for soup." "Get those stinky crackers off my table." The staff are obviously taken back by this. It's just like, okay, fine, we just wanted to change it up a little bit. Relax, old man. Take the crackers away, and they have their meal. And after that, M calls in 2 specialists. One from scientific research, and another from the Department of Agriculture. It is the man that was from the Department of Agriculture that finally puts a pin on it. So, before this group of girls, there was one other one that was allergic to turkeys. Thankfully, they were able to get the name as well as the general location. And wouldn't you know that there was a mysterious illness that ruined most of the turkeys, so all of them had to be slaughtered as they were not fit for human consumption. The Department of Agriculture says, sounds like biological warfare. And then starts to go into detail as to what this would represent. Blofeld definitely had the intelligence as well as the money to come up with the most brilliant way of biological warfare, hypnotizing the girls into spraying some sort of virus upon various pieces of agriculture that they are magnets of. So, first it'll be the turkey, then it'll be the chicken, then it'll be the potatoes, and then it'll be whatever else the girls were allergic to. Now, this is something that I really can't say one way or the other, but I guess the major reason this would be upsetting is that England at that point had stopped being more of an industrial magnet and started becoming a bit more agricultural, which not only would that be bad for business, but even on top of that, the idea that all the food supply would be tainted would definitely cripple the country. And so the one thing is left, how to be able to apprehend this man. Bond has an idea. However, it is something that must be strictly off the books. M throws the book out the window and says, let's hear it. He's going to contact Draco to be able to attack the base head on. Bond calls up Draco to tell him the good news that him and Tracy are to be married. However, instead of wanting the dowry of £1 million, he wants to apprehend Blofeld. To which Draco's just kind of like, yeah, sure, anything for my future son-in-law. It is there that they go to a back part in France where one of the defense ministers has a helicopter he can loan to Draco. Draco is a little annoyed that he has to cash in a favor for somebody so high up, but this is a very important thing. So, he is able to assemble a very motley crew of people. Before they take off, Bond tries his best to lay a whole map as to what this Piz Gloria looks like. It is there that demolition expert comes in with ideas of where to plant C4 charges, as well as what other ways are needed to attack the base. The plan is solid. They all get together in that helicopter and make their way into Switzerland. They do encounter a fair bit of resistance, not only from the Switzerland airspace, but also from Piz Gloria, as it is private property. However, they go under the guise that they are for the Red Cross, flying through to Italy to deliver blood plasma. However, Swiss Air does not really take kindly to this, and to which they come up with the excuse,
You are carrying passengers?
Of course I am. Distinguished representatives of the world press. They've had enough of your nonsense. So have I.
the radio goes silent for a while until they land on Piz Gloria. From there, they try to be diplomatic. However, the pilot nudges over to Bond and says, look over there. Blofeld is getting away. Bond is just like, oh, come on. He rips the door open and just makes a beeline for him as possible. Meanwhile, Mark Ange takes care of the base. Blofeld had been planning this for some time, and he had an emergency bobsled in place that he was able to get on and go as fast as possible. Bond unfortunately has to lose some precious time trying to find a bobsled that'll work for him. It is a very intense chase, as I'm not sure if you've ever seen bobsleds, but they can go really fast, like as fast as a car on a highway fast. Bond tries his best to come after him, to which Blofeld throws a hand grenade on the bobsled. While the bobsled is destroyed, Bond only has a wrenched shoulder, as well as some minor scrapes and bruises here and there, including a great big gash across his forehead. Blofeld makes it to the run, to which Bond tries to pursue him on foot as fast as possible. He is able to make it to the village, when off in the distance there is a massive explosion when all the debris of Piz Gloria slowly coming down the mountain. When the fire department to take care of this recent explosion, Bond goes under the guise that he was by the cable car when it fell and a cable snapped, not only giving him a giant gash on his forehead, but also explaining all his other bruises. He recovers in the hospital when he goes once again to the head of Swiss intelligence, the same guy that he called on Christmas Day. From there, he is able to send a coded message to M saying, Spectre has been destroyed, but unfortunately our main man has got away. It then requests that he takes 2 weeks leave. The 2 weeks, the plan, the wedding. Bond was very excited for this wedding. Excited enough not to notice a toad-like figure watching him wherever he went. Eventually, get married at a nearby chapel. Which it's interesting that the Justice of the Peace says, yeah, we had a few reporters coming in wanting to know your story. We tried to leave them at the door, but it was weird that they were particularly interested in the time this wedding was and when you were leaving. Bond doesn't think much of this, seeing that he's part of the Secret Service, and, well, some of the other servicemen are quite curious as to what kind of woman James Bond would marry. The couple are completely and utterly in love. They decide to take their time for their honeymoon, saying that they have all the time in the world. Bond decides to pull over as the Justice of the Peace's wife had put flowers all over the car, and Bond is like, this is such an annoying sight. Do you mind if I take these off? Tracy's like, yeah, sure. So, they go on driving, and there is a red sports car behind him. Tracy is saying, do you think I should try to outrun him? Basically really loving that whole energetic and adrenaline-fueled spirit that both of them have. However, Bond is like, no, it's perfectly fine, just let them pass. Well, they pass all right when a gunshot rings out and Tracy is killed. The car loses control and knocks out Bond for quite a while. When he comes back, a policeman is trying to wake him up, saying, what happened here? Bond looks over to see Tracy is dead. And he explains to the cop, and that is where the book ends. When it comes to comparing this book to the movie, it is insane how somehow the story beats of both are exactly the same. But yet, the details is where things vary. So I think I'll just try to explain the differences. The first is really the opening itself. While it is pretty similar, it's interesting that the pair are not picked up. In fact, Tracy runs away to the casino.
This never happened to the other fella.
And it is the next day that Bond meets up with Tracy. One of the henchmen is in Tracy's room, and there is a fight scene. Bond takes this as a trap and attempts to confront Tracy with it. She doesn't really give much information, and they still have their lovemaking. But what's fascinating is the idea that she actually manages to find the money, probably from her father. The next day, Bond is held captive and is then taken to Draco, where the scene plays out pretty much the same as it does in the movie. But the main difference being, he says that he will look into Blofeld, but only to the future son-in-law. And so, the idea that he would see Tracy again at his birthday. He does so, to which Tracy is smart to the idea, saying, I know this is just a deal, and you know, a host should just supply the information. Draco is very annoyed that she was able to figure it out, but gives the information to Bond. There is a gunboat in Switzerland. Not really a whole lot to go on compared to the book. However, from there, Tracy storms off, saying, well, now that the deal is done, there's not really any reason for you to stick around here anymore. To which Bond is just kind of like, that's a mistake right there. I actually want to be with you. And there we have a very nice montage, which I think this is a fantastic change from the book to the movie adaptation. Is, in all honesty, the book adaptation, the romance seems pretty out of nowhere, but the movie very much establishes that both of these characters are in love. So Bond pursues this gunboat with the little help of some of Draco's men. There's a nearby construction site where one of his henchmen is able to give him a safecracker and a photocopier. Bond is able to get some documents and is able to give them to M. Now, what is really different from the movie compared to the book is the idea that it was M that dismisses the case and not Bond that dismisses the case. However, after the evidence from Gumboldt, M decides to reopen the case, and so Bond lays out the plan of going to the College of Arms, not M. And what's interesting is we completely skip out Sable or Griffin, and we just simply go to Sir Hilary. The plan is basically the same. However, book Bond is a lot more knowledgeable in heraldry than movie Bond is. So, Bond and Blofeld meet up for the second time. That's a bit of a plot hole on the movie continuity. And Bond reassures him that, you know what, there is definitely a chance that you are the Count. Now, unlike the book, where he only sleeps with Ruby and gets the information through the hypnotism, it is very much hinted at that he is going around to all the girls in the research facility. He even kind of jokes to one of the guards saying, there's so much work to do, it's all piling up. However, what's fascinating is that that same man from Draco's company decided to go on to Pisloria to see what exactly is happening. He becomes the Swiss agent. However, the difference is with the book, where it's highly suggested that he died. In the movie, we see him hanging out in the cold, and he is dead. Bond's cover is blown not so much by the ally, but because he got his facts wrong about the Blofeld family.
Beauchamp, too, are not in the Augsburg Cathedral, as you said, but in the St. Anna Kirche. Sir Hilary Bray would have known.
And you might try inviting him to Augsburg. The Blochons have been coming from there for generations. And you might try inviting him to Augsburg.
And there, in movie fashion, Blofeld explains that this is all biological warfare, and he is going to hold the world hostage. Apparently, he even had a bit of a trial run saying that he started a nasty case of foot and mouth disease. As for how in the world the virus is going to get into England, that is his little secret. So, Bond is able to escape in a very similar fashion to the book. Gets to town, gets to Tracy, where the action scene is a lot more interesting as there is a stock car pit, and that is how they are able to get rid of their pursuers. With Irma Bunt leading the charge in the movie interpretation, Bond is just barely able to escape, where Blofeld gives his demands. Not only does he want his title of Count to be recognized, but he also wants a pardon for all his past crimes committed. Unfortunately, the Ministry has no choice but to agree with this, and even tries to make light of the situation, but Bond is very ticked off, understandably, because as he was able to escape, Tracy ended up being captured by Blofeld. So, not able to find any help from the Ministry, Bond calls upon Draco to invade Piz Gloria. Now, in the book, there was only one helicopter, but in the movie, there is an entire army that invades Piz Gloria, which I think is better in terms of the action movie. And the other big thing I appreciate the movie for that I feel like the book just kind of glosses over is, after the bobsled run, Bond very much believes that he killed Ernst Stavro Blofeld. The idea that he was kicked up into a branch and that he was hanged. Well, in the book, it's just kind of like, he got away. Time to marry my beautiful wife. So, it makes the surprise at the end even more intimidating. In fact, I feel like there's a fair bit of build-up there. Well, in the book, it was all about the idea that Bunt is everywhere. It's kind of terrifying in the idea that they see the car and you see Blofeld wearing a neck cast and you see Bunt in the back. It's just like, oh no, he did survive. Get out of there! Well, from there, the ending plays out very similarly. The only difference is Tracy was driving the car in the book, and in the movie, it is Bond that was driving the car. Both end on that same melancholy note. And probably one of the other things I found impressive is, so in the book, one of the henchmen gets liquefied by an oncoming train. It's crazy that in the movie they had their own interpretation of it, where one of the guards is eaten by a giant snowblower. That must have been pretty impressive. I mean, I know they were pushing the envelope in the 60s, but this movie's only rated PG, and that feels very much like a PG-13 sort of death. So the last thing I want to note about the movie. George Lazenby himself. Honestly, I think he plays the role pretty well. That was kind of the issue, is he had a lot of competition that would go up against. People knew James Bond as Sean Connery. And no matter who they filled in the role, if they got like Gregory Peck, Cary Grant, or maybe even some other A-lister actor, audiences would have been disappointed regardless because it wasn't Sean Connery. And that was really the first nail in the coffin for Lazenby. And the other thing as well is Sean Connery's interpretation of the character was a Superman. He could take on legions of troops and not even have a scratch on him. However, Lazenby, I feel like, is the everyman. Very much like the Bond in the novels. He is vulnerable. He could be killed. He gets weak. He gets tired. A lot of people say that it's a bit of a wimp out, that in the movie, Lazenby is very on edge when he is in the town, but yet in the book, it's pretty similarly described, except in addition to being on edge, he is just completely exhausted by the whole ordeal. And this is the other big thing as well, is I feel like Lazenby is probably the only Bond I could think of that the idea of seeing him get very depressed over the death of Tracy, I just feel like that hasn't really been done by any other Bond. I will admit Daniel Craig came pretty close, but I don't know. For me, it seems like that interpretation of more like, they will pay for this, rather than Lazenby's interpretation is just like, my life is completely over. What's the point of going on anymore? Once again, the everyman instead of the Superman. So unlike the movie series, which we never got a satisfying conclusion to, I mean, we did kind of get a conclusion in For Your Eyes Only, where Blofeld is finally killed, but you want the exciting conclusion? You want to read You Only Live Twice. Not only is this a really good book, but it is my personal favorite movie of the James Bond series. But since I already did a review of that, instead we will be talking about the final of the Ian Fleming books next time, The Man, the Golden Gun, for the first time in paperback. Until next time, keep having fun.